Hello and welcome back to the Facts of Facts, the only Facts of Life podcast that is holding out for somebody to ask him to the Sadie Hawkins dance.
You know who might? Eunice Schramm.
Oh, I just want to shram uglies with her. We are back. Hello, Britt. I know that it looks like you haven't taken down your Christmas tree like a month after the holidays, but we are filming or recording these a little early, so it's actually pre-Christmas right now, and we are speaking to you from the past.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I can leave this fucking thing up until I think like the 6th or the 14th of January. So we could be in the future.
That's true. You never know where we are, and that
we travel through the space-time continuum all the time. We go back to 1982. We go all the way to Paris. It's chaos. But where we always end up is the cafeteria.
We always end up in the cafeteria. Do you want to know something weird, Britt?
Yes. Always. What are you talking to?
In like, I want to say like 14, 15 episodes, we'll never see the cafeteria again.
No.
Yes.
No. That can't be true.
It is true.
That can't be true.
I know, it's crazy. It's bizarre. But
wait,
nothing.
You said in 14 or 15 episodes, we won't ever see it again.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm glad you told me now.
How does that make you feel?
To prepare.
Yeah.
So that I can bid adieu to the cafeteria for the next 14 episodes. And then at the end of it, we can, give it a Viking funeral and send it off in a pyre and light it on fire with a flaming arrow.
Well, I mean, we will replace the cafeteria with another...
Oh, really? With something that is cafeteria shaped, but just not cafeteria?
Actually, the opposite.
Oh.
Something that's shaped much more narrow, but has the same capacity for eating.
Ah, okay. So is this Edna's Edibles?
It sure is.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So today we are discussing...
Yes.
For the Asking, episode 10 of season 4, directed by the one and only Azad Khalada. Really
stunning.
Great work.
It gets better and better. By that I mean worse and worse. So
yeah,
the blocking of this was out of control. People were just wandering in and out. I actually there was a moment where everyone was just standing by themselves, not doing anything in the first scene.
Yes. It does feel like Azad might be a little tired of the cafeteria setup. He's itching to mix things up.
Yeah.
So this episode was written by one and doneers of the Fact of Life world.
Okay. Before you get started on unpacking who these people are and why they only wrote one episode of this television show, I was thinking as I was taking my notes and as I was preparing for this, that aside from all of the other ones that are all the other episodes that are blatantly incredibly offensive, like the one where everyone is dropping the R word over and over again, the one the entire Paris movie, the one where it was let's get Tootie into child pornography, let's try that out,
and then there was the one where it was, let's get Tootie into child prostitution, totally different
pornography episode. Blah blah blah, right? And then they're the ones that are just sort of oddly incompetent, they're not malicious or malevolent on the level of the Girls Go to Paris movie, which I actually still haunts me, and I have fever dreams about it, which actually also takes me back to earlier this year, which was a very difficult part of the year, and so I have very bad associations with that film.
All people do. It doesn't surprise me that you will associate with the pandemic, because I think people kind of did already before a pandemic had happened.
Before it came out. Okay, but putting aside all of those ones, right? Sort of general incompetence and actual badness. This episode was the platonic ideal of a show that if you showed me just this episode, I would have been like, this piece of fucking shit. I can't believe that they tried to make this show about little girls learning their lesson about how to be, you know, cool, outgoing feminists. And it was actually an episode about Natalie's fear of rejection. I was livid about this, that they used something that is technically very sexist, like the Sadie Hawkins dance, right? To then make a message about basically Natalie shouldn't be fearful of rejection when she is potentially going to ask out her crush, but she's so afraid of being rejected by him that she objects to the whole thing on principle. And then she yells at all the other girls for not adhering to feminist principles. And then at the end, the denouement is that all the things that Natalie purportedly held so dear, which are her feminist principles, go right into the fucking toilet because she gets a date with the guy she has a crush on.
But we know she was a fake feminist all along.
Regardless, I couldn't believe this. This was so sort of like I will say this, it gave all the girls and Mrs. Garrett a lot of stuff to do, like chitter chatter. Like all the girls are ending and trying to get dates, right?
Yes.
Mrs. Garrett is, catering and providing the music for the Sadie Hawkins dance and apparently going on a date to it because she's a liberated lady. But so it had this script had business in it, but it ended up shitting on the feminism so hardcore that I was like, I hate this. I hate this.
That's what I thought you would say. I will say this. I thought this episode, this is message aside, so please don't at me, and I'm talking to you, Britt.
I'm adding you right now. I'm preemptively tweeting at you.
This episode had good performances and really good jokes from our cast. There were good deliveries of quick punchlines that seemed to all be suited to the actors' strengths, which is not normally the case. Normally they give a joke that would probably work for Tootie to Joe, and you're like, that was garbage. So at least this kind of worked. The message is wrong. And I remember as a child always being like, I don't really like that. But I also remember this. At the end of the episode, everybody's like, fuck you, Natalie. There is at least that vibe that the other girls are like, you're gross. You just totally did use feminism in a way that creeps me out. And they all seem disappointed by her. And I as I said, I did text you, Natalie is infuriating in this episode.
And she also, not only is it we're right hot on the tail of the last episode where she was dating Alfred. Where did this Ben person come from? I thought she was sucking off half of, Stone Military Academy.
That was one weekend, and a fun one, but one weekend. That's far away.
She's moved on to Ben now.
Yeah, I mean, don't most 14, 15-year-old girls just... You saw how Tootie is?
I mean, I suppose so, but the other thing is that Natalie treats this as like a life or death problem of facing, the possible rejection, so that she needs to throw, 100 years of feminism under the bus. And then, not only that, but later, she delights in other people's despair.
She sure does. She's
like, I'm so happy you're unhappy. This pleases me to no end. oh, you're unhappy, but I got a date now. I gotta go. Bye. And like we don't, but the thing is that so that's having your cake and eating it too, which is a Natalie Green type of thing, is to have two cakes just in case you have your cake, but then you also have a cake so you can eat too. Anyway, but so she basically goes around yelling at everyone about feminist principles for 24 minutes. And then in the last minute, we get the last 20 seconds, we get the girls being mad at her and being like, you're a phony feminist. And then that's it. We don't get her, like, we get her being like,
we'll talk about it tomorrow at Sunday brunch.
After I've blown Ben for 4 hours.
I mean, maybe Ben's eating her out.
Maybe he has, because, he clearly needed a very retrograde way of getting a date out of Natalie by proposing the Sadie Hawkins dance.
Proposing the Sadie Hawkins dance to get her to ask, and then she doesn't ask, so then he goes and he brings it up to her, like, I thought you were going to ask. Just ask! Just ask!
Exactly! Like, we could have just had the dance, We
couldn't, because then we'd have to see the dance.
Exactly.
All right, so let's get into this. So it was written by Nick Gore and Jerry Jacobius.
So two men wrote this episode?
Yes.
About feminist principles.
Here's the thing. I don't know this for
Chef's fucking kiss.
There's no way these writers picked this as their choice of topic. This was given to them. They were writing the funniest version that they could. But these guys are one and doneers. They're not even like Jerry Mayer. I'm sure he was all over what was going to happen in the big fight because he's one of the creators of the show. Yeah. These guys, they were lucky to get this episode. This is actually their first TV gig. So I'm not.
Is it their last TV gig?
It is not. They did some stuff. They did Alice the following year. The year after that, they did Silver Spoons, and then they did. And I don't know if you're aware of this show, but this show called it was originally called Second Chance, but it got retooled and it became called Boys Will Be Boys. All of this happened in the span of one season. And it was an early Fox show starring Matthew Perry in 1987. The concept of the show was that, and I just want to get the facts right because I have it basically memorized, but a guy dies in 2011 due to a hovercraft accident because it's the future.
Of course, all those hovercraft accidents we have now.
Yes. 9 years ago. 10. We're in the future still. They aired it for 2 months, and it was basically about this guy died, and he goes back to 1987, where his former self, his younger self, Matthew Perry, was at a crossroads. He could either rob a gas station and head down a life of crime and then die in 2011, or 2011 dead him could come and intervene, and basically he did. That's what he does. So he goes to Earth, and basically there's an old man hanging out with Matthew Perry all the time. It's very weird. It's not his. He's just like, I know everything about you. I'm just like, I think he's cool. So after 2 months of airing episodes of this, they were like, what the fuck? This is bad. They took the show off for a month, just 1 month, and it came back. It changed its name. It was now called Boys Will Be Boys, and they got rid of the dead guy from the future and the entire conceit. And so all of a sudden, now it's just Matthew Perry and his cool young friends that are actual kids. And there's no, they used to be a really poor family, which is why Matthew Perry robbed the gas station for his mom. They were about to lose the house. That was like a big plot point in the first 8 episodes. They come back, they're in Vegas. They're just a rich family going on nice Hollywood vacations, whatever. They started their Boys Will Be Boys term with a 3-part episode set in Las Vegas where everybody, the family and all of their friends, were on vacation together. That was like, we're retooling the show. This is what we're going to do. And yet, this all happened in one season, and I have a vivid memory of everything that happened in this season, and I was like all on board for all of it. Anyway, also, They predicted the death of Muammar Gaddafi, getting the cause of death and the year right. And they had a date, and they were off by like a month.
Okay. Congratulations to those two men.
No, I'm not them. The show.
Oh, the show.
The show,
Well,
Second Chance. They weren't just like, yes, and we know when he's gonna die. The show,
because
Second
we're
Chance.
taking part in it.
The show, Second Chance, which started in 2011, like the guy who died right after future Matthew Perry was Muammar Gaddafi.
Ah, okay. Let me just pause you right there for 1 second.
Sure, I'm close.
I guess it might actually have been conscious and a little bit of a wink. But do you remember there was a and I can't remember the name of it, but there was a movie with Zac Efron that came out in like I guess the last 10 years or something, where he goes back in time. So Matthew Perry in the present, who's married to Judd Apatow's wife, that hot redheaded one, is married to her and is very depressed and upset. And then like something bad happens to him or something metaphysical happens to him. So he goes back in time and he's transported back into his teenage hot body played by Zac Efron.
I did not know that existed.
Yeah. So it's one of those like body swapperoo movies, but it's funny that Matthew Perry was like, yeah, I'll be in that. And I love these sorts of things. I love these sorts of things.
That's where I got my start.
Yeah.
So Gore and Jacobius went on to write an episode of The Dirty Dozen. They wrote a show called Marblehead Manor, which is a super weird, like sort of soap opera moneyed half-hour sitcom in the late 80s, which I enjoyed. They wrote Hunter. They continued to write together into the early 90s when they wrote police-oriented stuff like FBI, The Untold Stories, Cop Files, and Cold Case Cops, which appears to be their last credit in 2001. And now you know about the duo of Gore and Jacobius.
FBI World. What was that last one? FBI.
FBI, The Untold Stories. Then there's Cop Files. And then there's Cold Case Cops.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said Cock Files.
Oh, man, no. That's
a whole
in my file.
There's a file on your laptop with that.
Yeah, Cock Files. Cold Case Cox. Anyway, so we open where? Where do we open?
In the kitchen.
I know. Sexy, right?
Whoa.
But the girls in the kitchen are looking longingly at the cafeteria as if we're supposed to be starting in there. What's going on?
Yeah. But they're looking, and so the three of them, so it's Natalie, Tootie, and Blair. They are staring, they're peeping through the pass-through.
Yes.
And
thank you for giving it a name. I had no idea what to call
that. Anyway, so then Joe comes tumbling down the stairs being like, hey, what's going on? What are you guys doing? Like, what's up? And they're like, what's going on? And she's like, what's going on in the cafeteria? And they all turn around. They're just like, boys. And she's like, ugh, bleh, get that away from me.
Joe's upstairs flicking the beans of some policewoman reruns. She doesn't care about this at all.
No.
Yeah, and so she wants to know why they're there, though. And Natalie says, don't question it. Just pray one of them picks me to be their latest victim.
Yeah.
Apparently the boys are there to talk with Mrs. G about some dance committee thing. Blair says that Nat has a crush on one of the guys. And Nat's like, I do not have a crush on one of the guys. I have a crush on all of the guys.
Well, no, also, it's like, I wrote down in my notes, it was like, Blair outs Natalie's crush. And she's like, oh, yeah. She cruelly outs the fact that Natalie has a crush on one of these dudes. And Natalie is just like, she's just like, no, I don't. But I just wrote down in my notes, I was like, oh, no. It's going to be a Natalie-focused, boy-crazy Natalie-focused episode.
Sure was.
And she's like, I don't have a crush on him. I don't have a crush on him. I just think he's smart and funny and interesting and has a cock that won't stop.
Yeah, her kid.
But I don't know. No, I don't have a crush on him. I don't know who you're talking about.
Mrs. Garrett enters the kitchen with a half pitcher of iced tea and some totally clean glasses, because props didn't think to put iced tea remnants in the glasses, and announces that the meeting is over. But it's not over, we learn.
No.
They're
No,
still talking.
the meeting gets adjourned, which means that all three of the other girls just go streaming into the cafeteria like cockroaches. Like,
yeah,
they're
like
just
hoping some Bates penises will fall into their laps.
yeah, they're like, let me in there. They're like, when I like, so when I have like packages delivered or whatever, I have two very noisy, very curious cats, and I have to lock them into the bathroom because otherwise they will probably escape, and I'm very afraid of that. So I lock them in there, and I can hear them immediately banging on the door to be let out. Immediately. Doesn't matter how long they've been there. 5 seconds. It's just this like, like, and literally my cat knows how to knock on the door. Anyway, so they're screaming in there. And when I let my cats out, and at this point have been in there for 30 seconds when I go and get a package from outside and close the door and open the door to the bathroom and let them out, they all start screaming at me and start scurrying exactly like the Eastland girls when they know that this meeting is over so that they can go in and accost these Bates boys.
It was a little creepy.
It was
Mrs. Garrett's
aggressive.
like, I wish the girls moved that fast at cleanup time.
Yeah.
Joe just tisks. And our time in the kitchen has come to a close. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Wasn't it nice?
Yeah, it was very brief.
Yeah. Now we're in the cafeteria. We're a bunch of Bates boys. And two girls are still holding that meeting, even though Mrs. Garrett said it was over.
Yeah, I guess that's Eunice Schramm.
Hell yeah, it is. Perhaps they wanted to talk without the narc in the room. Like, who's bringing the blow? What kind of flavored condoms are we getting? Like, stuff like that. Just stuff Mrs. Garrett shouldn't know about. Anyway, the head captain of the dance committee makes a hilarious joke about how if there's any trouble with the balloons, let him know because they got a lot of hot air over at Bates. Ayo!
Because they've got enough hot air over at Bates that they could fly the Goodyear blimp. I wrote down, that's not how it works. Blimps do not fly because of hot air.
And hot air does not fill balloons at dances.
Exactly. What are they going to do? Blow them up and then tape them to the walls like the most pathetic, shitty school dance possible, or just let them sit on the floor?
It's just a hot air balloon party.
Yeah, but speaking of, so hot air balloons, the Goodyear blimp flies because of heavy air, not hot air.
I see. And what makes heavy air?
So, helium is lighter than air, and
is that who Heavy Air Bardem is named after?
Yes, Heavy Air Bardem.
Okay, go on. Tell me about heavy air.
So blimps fly because the blimp inside is full of helium, right? Which rises, right? And the reason why it rises, why it doesn't just like go up, is because they have these basically these like air valves so that they release the air that is in these large pockets on the sides of the blimp so that it rises naturally. And then once the blimp is at the right height, they have to constantly be like keeping the I guess sort of make sure that they have enough air coming in and out so as to keep the blimp flying straight.
I see. In season 4 of Big Brother, there was a competition where it was the final 4, and the winner got to fly in the Goodyear blimp with one other person, and in the house. And there's one guy and 3 girls. The one guy really wanted to go in the blimp, thought that sounded like the coolest idea in the world. He was like a dad, really wanted it. He ended up disqualifying himself in the competition, and the 3 girls that were left hated him, but also hated flying and did not want to be in this hot air balloon. And they were all competing to lose so that they didn't have to go.
Wow.
And then they were like, if you go and do that, then I'm going to pick you and you're going to have to come with me. It was like this whole thing where it was like, it was supposed to be a prize and they were like forced to do it. Was great.
I didn't expect that plot twist of like, we're all competing to not win and also not alienate the other person who does unfortunately win so that they don't choose me for this gift.
Exactly. And nobody was going to take the guy who wanted to go in the blimp because he sucked really bad. He was like racist and sexist and terrible, and they hated him. Anyway, they were just like stringing him along because they knew they could beat him, so that's why he was still there. All right. That was the year of the woman, that season of Big Brother. It was great. So, we see Natoots and Joe staring at the head captain of the dance committee, whatever he is, as he finishes his important dance committee paperwork. I loved how he was shuffling it around. Like, what are you doing with your paperwork? What do you need that for?
So much paper. I literally wrote down, what are all these folders? He had so many folders. He had like
Very
4
official.
clipboards. He had like cruise director clipboards. He had like all this shit and like loose papers too.
Yeah, and
You
this
know,
is
it was
not
just
the
chaos.
end. They have follow-up meetings.
Yeah, I mean, and how important is this dance? Apparently extremely important to Natalie and Ben.
Well, anyway, Tootie points at the head captain and goes, Ben's the one. Probably because he's the only one who's allowed to get lines. Anyway, shall we talk about Ben?
Yeah, 1 second before we
Please.
do. I do like that so because Joe doesn't really get that much to do in this episode, they give her sort of like semi-expository like help lines, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's going on in the cafeteria? Boys, you know? Boy, who gives a shit about boys? And then it's like, and then Tootie's like, Ben's the one. And Joe just goes, the one what? Because apparently, like in this episode, they really wanted to stretch it out. They couldn't just say, that's the hot guy that Natalie has a crush on. That's the smart, interesting, funny one.
They could have, but that's not fun.
Yeah, that's not the facts of life way. Efficiency and humor.
It's true. All right, so let's talk about Ben. He's played by Brian Robbins, and he's most famous to me as one of the many, 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 many kids on Head of the Class, which in my head is like a cast of like 75, even though I know it's not. But as a kid, that's how it felt. Did you ever watch the show?
It rings a bell. I mean, I think, you know...
It was Howard Hessman was the teacher, and then later on it was Brian Connolly.
Yeah, it makes... I feel like, was one of the sets like the hallway a lot?
Yeah, it was hallway and classroom were like the two sets. And it's super weird because it lasted for 6 years. And yet, these kids had the same teacher the whole time.
Yeah.
I have to go back and figure out how that worked. It's fascinating.
So I will say this about this dude is that he looks 40.
He's very young here, actually. And now he actually does not look as old as I thought he was going to look. I saw a picture of him.
He looks too old for Natalie.
Well, it's interesting because he will, let's see, 4 years from now, he'll go on to play a 16-year-old. And he'll play that 16-year-old for 6 years. So he basically had a mullet and he had a leather jacket on Head of the Class. And I literally used to think he was Dennis Miller. Like, young Dennis Miller was on Head of the Class. And then Dennis Miller now, old Dennis Miller, he's on SNL. That's what my childhood brain would do. But I also thought Tina Turner and David Bowie in Labyrinth were the same person. Anyway, he was born the day that JFK was shot, according to his IMDb proudly boasts.
Proudly. You know, I have to say, I know someone who was born on 9/11. And so it's like one of those things where it's like, things were fine, but like until this bad thing happened the day on your birthday. Whereas this guy was literally the day off. Like JFK was obviously dead already, but it's just like, you know, like incredibly bad, you know, stars to be born under.
His birth name is Brian Levine, which is also the birth name of the first guy I ever had sex with and then said, I'm not gay, bro. Who's not the first guy I ever had sex with.
Was it this guy?
It was not.
Oh.
Anyway, good time. So this was his first year of acting. In 1982 alone, Brian Robbins did Trapper John MD, Harper Valley PTA, which I meant to look up. Is that a show about a PTA, like a Parent Teachers Association?
Who are you asking? I don't know this shit.
I've heard about it many times.
I know how blips work, and I know a lot about Lil Abner now. And we're gonna have a fucking like little Abner hour later, and then also we're gonna transition very smoothly into a very frank and long discussion about Helen Gurley Brown's legacy.
I'm looking forward to it, but right now we're doing Brian Robbins.
So don't ask me anything about the fucking, Moorhead PTA sitcom that lasted for 6 minutes in 1983.
He did Archie Bunker's Place. He did Cagney and Lacey, Taxi, Harper Valley PTA, Trapper John, and Facts of Life, all in 1982 in his first year of acting. That is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And then and this is like the last Facts of Life of 1982, I believe. And so this was what he closed his year out with, which is pretty good. And then he continued by being in Three's Company as Mark Furley, a relative of Mr. Furley, which is pretty impressive.
Oh.
He did Knight Rider. He did Different Strokes, where he played Sky High. And he did Newhart, Charles in Charge, Twilight Zone, Growing Pains, Mr. Belvedere, and then, of course, Head of the Class. That was all in 4 years. And then in the early 90s, he was in Chud 2, Bud the Chud. He was in Full House twice. And speaking of Candace Cameron, bleh, he was in a TV movie with her called Camp Cucamonga, which also starred Jennifer Aniston, Danica McKellar, who is very hard to say, G. Gordon Liddy, Sherman Helmsley, and John Ratzenberger, and Steve freaking Urkel, who does a rap, the Camp Cucamonga rap, which you can find on YouTube. This is a movie that I think we all need to watch. I'm definitely gonna watch it during the holidays. I recommend we all do.
You missed one who's in Camp Cucamonga.
Who's that?
Johnny Galecki.
Oh, you're right. Johnny Galecki is also there. Thank you. Oh, but I'm not supposed to ask you questions during this session.
I'm a big Cucamonga head, as you know.
Who isn't these days? Anyway, Brian's last acting gig was an episode of Kenan and Kel where he played Risotto.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's got brains. This dude has been working for 1,000 years.
Yeah, well, that's not where his story ends, because he ended up being quite a prolific film and television producer, producing things like All That Crumbs, What I Like About You, Norbit, Fred the Movie, and all its sequels, Smallville, One Tree Hill, several others. Most recently, the films Irreplaceable You and Public Disturbance from last year. And now we can get back to Natalie ogling Ben.
Yeah.
All right, so Tootie outs Natalie to Joe that Ben is the one that Nat's been crushing on.
Yes.
And then a boy, technically boy number one, according to the end credits, tells Ben that he'll meet him at the car. And since he's black, Tootie follows him out with her nose like she's Toucan Sam.
Yeah. So Tootie just like sees this random dude and she's like, "Oh, you're black.
My ride's here."
Yeah, like just follows him like he's the Pied Piper. And it was odd because like she followed him in a way that seemed like she was in a trance.
Yeah, like Toucan Sam with his nose.
Yes, and which is unfortunate because it's like this show is basically positing the fact that, feminism is fake, and also that people
feminism is not fake. It's just for women who can't get dates. Just go on.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, my tiny lady brain didn't take that message from this incredibly perfect episode.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mansplain.
Also that no one can date outside their race. So it's like the one black guy gotta hook him up with Tootie.
Yes, I agree with that. Although I will say that was a feeling through my entire childhood. Was if you see a black person in a movie and then there's a black person of the opposite sex and they look at them, you're like, oh, they're a couple now.
They're in a thing.
And it's the same with like chunkies. Like you see like a chunky kid in school and he's all lonely. And then at the end of the episode, a chunky girl goes next to him and she's like, "Hey, you want some of my Twinkie?" And you're like, "Okay, everything's fine. You found a chunky."
Yeah, except for this one, which drastically confronted that because Ben is very handsome and Natalie's a little fatty.
mean, sure, but there's a seat for every asshole, as my dad always said. I know I like a chunky monkey.
Yeah.
So anyway, boy number one is played by Mark Jefferson, who was a very short IMDb with 0 photos. He played Joe in great performances, not Polnicek. He was Marcus in Freestyle with an exclamation point, Jason in The White Shadow, and Wendell 1 year after this in Max Dugan Returns. But according to IMDb, he is best remembered for his role as Black Kid in the 1980 film The Hollywood Knights. What a memorable role. With that Black Kid is about, I'm sorry, Hollywood Knights is about...
it's not called Black Kid?
No, it's not. Hollywood Knights is about a bunch of kids who raise hell through Beverly Hills on Halloween night in 1965. Seems interesting.
Yeah, that sounds like a good movie.
Considering it was made in 1980, I'm kind of like, I'm interested. I'd like to know what you're doing.
I wish. Here's the thing. In this household, we subscribe to, once we're out of Shocktober, you can't watch any more Halloween or scary movies ever for the rest of the month or for the rest of the year.
Why?
So that's just the rules, Dominic. I don't make them, but they're forced upon me. No, of course. But had I known about this movie, what was it called again? Black Man?
No, it's called Hollywood Knights.
I would have enjoyed watching that, and maybe I'll look it up. I'll write it down on my little notepad.
All right, good. With a K. Ben ends up thanking Mrs. Garrett for all her help with the dance, and then they plan to get together to talk about. Say it?
So she comes in looking absolutely grave. Like, she's coming in to re-announce that, Natalie's dad is having an affair, and she's also adopted, and, her real mom kind of sucks. She comes in with like this, like, very serious Mrs. Garrett, bad news is coming. And she comes in and she goes, we'll get together in a couple days and talk about the food.
So many O's.
What? While rubbing her hands like a creep. Like, she does the, like,
yum, yummy.
Yum, yum, yum. Yeah. And then Ben goes, that's my favorite subject, which is music to fucking Natalie's ears, because food is her favorite subject.
That is true. I'm assuming that this meeting is going to be just to talk strudel quantities, right? Like, that's all she's made at this point. Just, all I do is strudel. All I do is strudel. So Mrs. Garrett announces loudly that this dance will be the best one yet. Joe wants to know what the theme was, and Ben, for some reason, jokes that the men will be in formal drag.
Yeah, but he's like, Mrs. Garrett goes, girls, this dance is going to be the best one yet. Like, it was like very creepy. It's like it kind of peeped out of her. And then Joe's just like, oh, fuck. How's the social committee going to torture us now? And then Ben says, you're going to love it. It's formal dress, long gowns and gloves, and tiaras. And that's just the guys. And then Mrs. Garrett says, Ben came up with a fabulous idea.
Yeah, they never say that's not happening. The drag. And so for me as a child, I thought that was one aspect of a Sadie Hawkins dance.
Yeah.
I learned very quickly, because every sitcom did one, that it wasn't. Yes. But this was definitely my first exposure, and I was like, so... And honestly, and here's what's weird, is that later on in The Facts of Life, probably like 3 seasons from now, maybe 2 seasons from now, the girls are going to go, Blair and Joe are going to go to some kind of adult-ish party where the guys have to dress as full women and the women have to dress as men. So this is a thing that they're obsessed with on this show. So I was like, yeah, it's another one of them Sadie Hawkins things. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's the official thing about Sadie Hawkins dances, is that we gender swap roles and clothes.
I always wondered if Sophie B. Hawkins was a descendant of Sadie Hawkins, because she's all like, damn, I wish you were my boyfriend, which is kind of forward and sort of like on brand with
No,
the
it-
concept of a
didn't-
Sadie Hawkins thing.
Didn't Sophie B. Hawkins sing "Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover"?
Oh, is that what it is? Whatever it is. Damn, I wish I was your lover. Sure. I said
Yeah, but
boyfriend
isn't that
instead of lover.
isn't that a lesbian song?
No.
Or
Definitely
maybe
not.
I'm thinking of something else. Anyway.
The point is, it's very sexually forward.
Yeah.
It's a girl being like, hey, this is how I feel and I want it. And that's Sophie B. Hawkins, and that's also Sadie Hawkins. So I thought the Hawkins family were just reading these feminists.
Yeah.
I was apparently incorrect.
That's you're so far in terms of the Sadie Hawkins situation. I cannot wait to unpack this with you.
Well, we're here. Sadie Hawkins was a character in Lil Abner comic strip. Please unpack.
Well, so but before we do this, I'm just gonna say that we're gonna have to talk about Sadie Hawkins in 1 second, just because I need to get through a little bit more dialogue here. So Mrs. Garrett goes, she says, Ben's come up with a fabulous idea. He's gonna have a Sadie Hawkins dance, and then Tootie, because she's, they're using her for, I guess, explanation, is like, was Sadie Hawkins an Eastland graduate?
Yeah.
And it's like, at this point, I feel like everyone knows what this is. And then
also Tootie goes, and did they name the dance after her, like the twist? Who did they fucking name the twist after? Oliver Twist? What are you talking about? Nothing you're saying makes sense, Tootie.
No, nothing is making sense. Anyway, so then Natalie goes,
no, she's a character in the Lil Abner comic strip, right, Ben?
While sitting down very close to him. And then he ignores her. He goes, yeah. And then he ignores her while he's dealing with all of his business papers or whatever. And then she just goes like, she goes full troll face 4chan meme. She goes, because he rejects her. It was gross. Like, and it was just like, anyway. Yeah, so Ben explains, anyway, they named a dance after old Sadie. And then, again, as you said, Tootie being stupid and dumb, like, oh, you mean like the twist? And Mrs. Garrett explains, well, it does have a twist to it. The girl is supposed to invite the boy.
And then Joe's like, I am not pegging any dude in a tiara.
Yeah, I ain't going with no guy who's wearing a tiara. No, it's like very chill about this to like reinforce, traditional gender roles and performances and bullshit, from Joe, who is at this point, queer canon.
Yeah. Anyway, she'd rather just, peg Blair in a tiara.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about Sadie Hawkins.
Okay.
Because Natalie explains that it comes from the Lil Abner comic strip, right? So, formally, Lil Abner was created ran it for 43 years. It was a comic strip that ran from 1934 to 1977. It was created by Al Capp. It was an incredibly important comic strip, like culturally significant. Partly because it was incredibly like smart and took on like real world like issues and was sort of very clever. Anyway, but it was also the first comic strip that was based in the South, in the American South, because most comic strips were
Dog Patch.
Yes, Dog Patch. But so it was based in the South, which had a profound influence on how people around the world viewed the American South, right? It had 60 million readers in over 900 American newspapers and 100 foreign papers in 28 countries. Anyway, so the big point about Lil Abner is that it was basically like a country bumpkin Candide. Like he's this perpetually innocent, like he's always 19 years old, going through like moving through a
much
cynical,
like Brian Robbins on Head of the Class.
Yes, exactly. Moving through a cynical and threatening world. But yeah, it's set in the sort of like this phony place that's like Appalachia Burlesque. It's, Dog Patch, which is like West Virginia, Kentucky-esque, you know. Anyway, he lives, he's 6'3", and he lives in a ramshackle log cabin with his pint-sized parents. And
adorable.
I know, it is adorable. And then he has another brother who's also a giant. And it's like, as I said, it's like a burlesque Appalachia. So it has log cabins, turnip fields, hog wallows. And most Dog Patch residents are either lazy and stupid or scoundrels and thieves. So what the other thing that's interesting is that, so Al Cap, what was, interesting about it is that Al Cap was from the Northeast, but created this mock Southern accent dialect, which included phonetic sounds, I dialect, which is non-standard spelling to draw attention to pronunciation, sort of like instead of writing hog, you would write HAWG. So it's like hog, so you get what you're saying, right? Anyway, so created its own interesting pronunciation, creative spelling, deliberate malapropism. It came up with it put into like American vernacular a lot of the very like famous words and characters. One word is naturally, and also amusing but confusing.
I've not heard that too much.
But John Steinbeck called Al Cap possibly the very best writer in the world today in 1953. John Updike was a huge fan. So was Ralph Bakshi. Like a lot of people. Did
Al Cap do Andy Cap?
I don't know. I don't think so. He did this like his whole life. Anyway. So basically there are all these people that live in Dog Patch. And I just want to give you like a couple of their names. So, as I said, Lil Abner, his love interest, who's Lil Abner's like, sort of like, he's like, I don't ever want to get married. Being married sucks. That I've got to have my wife, and it's going to be annoying. And then there's Daisy May, who's always running around after him, who has these huge tits and tiny little skirt, but like very, very well intentioned. Like, it's like, I love you.
What? My sister actually played Daisy May in a like community theater version of Lil Abner when I was a kid. And my sister has probably the biggest breasts I've ever seen. And I can remember her Daisy May outfit being,
revealing. Anyway, so she's hopelessly in love with Lil Abner. Then, like, the other big characters are Mammy Yoakum, which is Abner's mom, Pappy Yoakum, Honest Abe Yoakum. Anyway. So they all but there are a lot of like other supporting characters like Mary and Sam, Moonbeam McSwine, Hairless Joe, and Lonesome Polecat. Available Jones, Stupefying Jones.
Available Jones should be my grinder name.
So what's so funny about that you say that is that Available Jones, so speaking of, is see, here's why it's so important here's why Lil Abner has such an ongoing legacy, is because it permeated like there were so many characters, there was so much world building within it that it basically took on so much stuff that everyone has a relationship with it. And so Available Jones was the entrepreneur who was always available for a price, including minding babies. And he liked to look after babies, but basically he would do anything for money.
Or babies.
What?
Or babies.
Yeah. Or babies. But very funnily enough as recently as 2016, speaking of Available Jones, Utah Governor Gary Herbert controversially referred to himself as Available Jones, the Dog Patch entrepreneur who does anything for a price, at a private meeting with lobbyists in 2016 to raise funds for his re-election campaign. So it's like, it's very present in the American, mind. But as you said about your sister being in the play version, they did a play version, and they also did a musical theater version, right?
That was what it was. It was a musical.
So most importantly, so they did a musical theater, a musical comedy that was very popular in high schools and colleges, because I think it's just it has a cast of 1,000, very chewy, fun things to say. Like, I think the first line that Daisy May says is like, "Abner, I brought you some worms."
Something like that.
Shit like that. Anyway, so it was written for Broadway, very successful musical comedy that opened in 1956, and then they made it into a movie at Paramount in 1959. And here's why this is so important to us. Charlotte Rae played Mammy Yoakum. So we've come full circle. Full fucking circle. And so let me just give you a brief description of Mammy Yoakum. Lil Abner's mom, who dominated the Yoakum clan through the force of her personality and dominated everyone else in Dogpatch with her fearsome right uppercut, sometimes known as the Goodnight Irene punch, which helped uphold law, order, and decency. She's the toughest character in all in all of Dogpatch. And a superhuman dynamo. Mammy did all the chores and all the cooking in the Yoakum family, including such treats like pork chops,
strudel,
turnips,
strudel,
bean soup, and candied catfish eyeballs.
Oh, I've had those. Those are good.
Yeah. Her authority is never questioned, and her catchphrase, "I have spoken," ends discussion and debate. And then she also says that her other more famous phrase is, "Good is better than evil because it's nicer." I feel like this is like Charlotte Rae. This is why they cast Charlotte Rae in Facts of Life, and why they put this whole Lil Abner thing in here. Also,
they didn't. You put the Lil Abner thing in there.
No, Natalie did. She mentioned it.
That's
anyway,
true.
But I'm going to get back to Sadie Hawkins. When he retired in 1977, Al Cap said that Mammy Yoakum was his favorite character to write. So, anyway, going back to Sadie Hawkins. Sadie Hawkins was formally coded into being a day on November 13th, but it was actually published the first time on November 15th, 1937, because Sadie Hawkins was the daughter of Hezekiah Hawkins, one of Dogpatch's earliest settlers, and Sadie Hawkins is, quote, "the homeliest gal in all of them hills." And she grew frantic, waiting for suitors until she reached the age of 35 and was still a spinster. So her father was worried about her living at home for the rest of her life. So in desperation, he called together all the unmarried men of Dogpatch and declared it, quote, Sadie Hawkins Day. A foot race was decreed, and Sadie pursued the town's eligible bachelors.
Yeah.
Matrimony was the consequence of Sadie catching a bachelor, and the bachelors of the town were running for their freedom. So this is both a very sexist and sad tradition.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. Natalie should object to this.
Yeah, well, Blair thinks it's barbaric.
Yeah, but not because of feminist reasons.
No, not because of feminism. But also, she did basically ask Leo out in A Different Drummer. So she's asked guys out before.
Yeah.
He certainly didn't ask her out. Anyway, Nat tries to start up a conversation about how it was Ben's idea, and Ben's just like, yep.
Yeah.
And then he talks to Mrs. Garrett and lights up when he says his two favorite words.
Whoa. I need to go back. So he basically is like, he's walking around with all of his business papers and folders, and Natalie's trying to like sort of corral him. And Tootie's just like, just in case like nobody like understood what we're talking about, she goes, wait a minute, the girl asks the guy?
Yes, yes. Tootie is very slow on the uptake here.
And Mrs. Garrett, cut to Mrs. Garrett. She goes, she does the word. It's like that. She goes, yes, yes. It's this like very condescending, obnoxious. Yes, it's the most natural thing in the world. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway.
Anyway, so he's like, Natalie chases after him with his folders, and he's like, yeah, well, I gotta be going. And then he goes over to Mrs. Garrett, and he goes, Mrs. Garrett, I've got, for the food at the dance, I've got 2 words for you. And what are those words? Clam dip. When that happened, I audibly gasped. I gasped so loudly that my husband, who was working upstairs, said, "What's wrong? Are you okay?"
Do you think because he wanted to dip it in her clam?
So that's the joke, presumably. But the reason that that's significant is that my husband loves clam dip.
What kind of husband? What kind of clam dip does he love? Because I love a very particular clam dip. I love it more than almost any other food. But there's also clam dips that I hate.
He makes his own. It's a family tradition.
I see.
Yeah, it's like part of his whole family thing. That's why it's like such a. This is why this is so significant. That
Is
this
it
man
a cold clam dip or a warm clam dip?
cold.
See, the one I make is a hot one.
No, it's a family recipe. It's basically it's like, minced clams, lemon juice, Tabasco, Worcestershire sauce, sour cream. You eat it with Ruffles. Anyway, we're making it. He really likes it. He's making it. It's like it's this sort of thing that is unbelievably simple, but is a very good task to give my husband in the kitchen, because he will fuss over it for like 2 hours just to get it absolutely perfectly right. So then he's not underfoot, making him sound like a terrible man. But anyway, no, the funniest thing also is that, as you know, Christmas is coming, or has come and gone. Who knows what year we're in at this point. But so we're doing the Feast of the Seven Fishes for Christmas Eve, because that's traditional, and my husband is Italian American, and that's an Italian American tradition. We're not going to do 7 fish dishes, because that's a little bit excessive for 2 adult humans and 2 small 10-pound cats. But he's making the clam dip for Christmas Eve.
Cool. I'm Italian American, and I'd never heard of this until like 2 years ago. The 7 fish thing. But my family's not a huge fish eating group. We like shrimp cocktail and stuff. But,
yeah, we're having shrimp scampi.
Oh, delicious. Well, my clam dip, just so you know, I'm sure he'll never make it because you only can have one clam dip.
So the AKA of this episode should be included in this podcast are 2 very different clam dip recipes.
Yes. Well, mine is like a giant baked clam.
Mm-hmm.
It's just without the shell. It's just like a dish filled with minced clams and lemon and garlic and Italian breadcrumbs, and then Parmesan cheese. And it's really tasty. I love it.
Peter would love that. That's basically like a big clams casino.
Yes, but with no bacon. Shell. It's a big clams oreganata is exactly what it is.
Okay. I think clams casino might have pork in it.
Yes, bacon. It's a totally different thing.
It is different, but it's in the realm of. He does like clams casino, so I feel like he would really like this.
Yes,
so I will suggest.
If you're a clams oreganata fan, this is the dish for you. Anyway,
clams, all kinds of clams.
So Mrs. Garrett tries to force them to set up for dinner or lunch or whatever fucking requires the floral tablecloths, while Tootie shout acts at Mrs. Garrett. I could never imagine asking a guy out and being like, "Hey, guy, want a boogie Saturday
Hey, guy, want a boogie on a Saturday? Bye, guy."
That was the first time I was like, all right. I chuckled. Not a great joke, just her delivery was really funny. She's screaming, and then she's like, "Hey, guy, want a boogie on a Saturday?" Like, I enjoyed that. I wasn't expecting it to go there. Blair reiterates that it would be embarrassing to watch a girl ask a guy out, and so Tootie's like, "Don't fucking watch. because I'm asking boy number one.
So, but again, that's the problem. That's just a problem that happens in this show so frequently. It's just these sorts of like baseline fundamental misapprehensions of like that where they're trying to milk that for a joke. Where it's like it's so embarrassing to watch a girl ask a guy out, so don't watch. Like, that's not a joke. It's just like you're missing the point of what I'm saying.
I mean, she's saying like, I don't care what you think. I'm gonna fucking do it. Tootie tells Natalie that this is her chance to ask Ben out. This is the first of many times. Did you keep track? I asked you if you could keep track.
I did.
How many times?
And you want to know
awesome.
how many?
Yes.
6.
Really? That's it?
Yeah.
It felt like they asked like 6,000 times.
No, that's what I expected. You texted me last night being like, hey, can you do me a favor? Can I rely on you to do some research onto Helen Gurley Brown? And I was like, yeah, of course. I know all about her already. But you're like, also, can you just keep track of how many times they asked Natalie to ask this boy out? And I was like, yeah, okay. So it's going to be like 1 billion. And I was like, well, I better get out my special pad and have a whole other list so I don't get distracted from taking my notes. And then, nope, 6.
Well, sorry, but also, I feel like you, because this was via text, not over the phone.
Yeah.
Your impersonation of me asking you these things is, I sound panicked. I sound like really worried. just I'm wondering how you're reading my texts now.
Oh, always in a panic. It's always in panic.
I gotcha. Anyway, so
it's you know how it is with when you can send a message on the iPhone where it just swarms the entire screen. That's how I read all of your texts. Just like, hey, can I rely on you for Helen Gurley Brown research? Can I?
Yeah, so Tootie does ask Natalie, tells her this is her chance to ask Ben out. Nat's pretty sure that Ben fucking hates her, even though Mrs. Garrett thinks that Ben wants a piece of that.
Well, again, so Tootie's like, well, why don't you use this as an opportunity to like do this? And she's like, well, Natalie's like, he doesn't even look at me when he grunts. And I was like, you know what? First of all, that's good because you would have to take that as a form of aggression because that's.
I thought you said that's good. I don't want him to look at you because he's gonna see what you look like.
No, but then like Mrs. Garrett does this bad thing where she's like, no, I think he likes you, and it's like, he's been. There's nothing of any evidence in front of me at this point that it's clear to me that he likes her at all.
Yeah, nothing in the least. But Mrs. Garrett,
so this is where I thought that Mrs. Garrett was doing a disservice to Natalie, doing that bad thing.
But she wasn't. She knew more than we did. She says it right here. She says she saw them talk on campus, and she got the vibe. And although Natalie's like, that was a pep rally, and I was in the audience, and I agree, I don't think it should count. But Mrs. Garrett claims that she saw off camera in scenes that we have not been around a spark between them.
No,
and I
didn't see a spark. She's like, I saw how you were talking. And it's like, and she was like, yeah, well, we were in an audience in a pep rally. I don't know what you saw, At this point, I was Team Natalie. I was like, Mrs. Garrett, don't do this thing where it's like you're trying to keep the hopes up alive of someone who clearly is, disappointed.
But she was right.
Yeah, but like if she was so right, then she should have made this happen earlier before this whole rigmarole.
She didn't think she needed to. We only just learned the depths of Natalie's insecurities. We thought they were pretty deep, but we didn't realize they were as deep as they are now.
Yes, we did.
I think
we've known this for ages. She has abandonment issues. She's completely insecure. She lost her job. She has to date. She sucked Alfred's dick. She was almost raped when she got her Hitler mustache wiped off in the forest. She's been through a lot.
In the forest. I like that's how you visualized it. In my head, it's by a bench.
Okay.
Anyway, so Mrs. Garrett changes the subject, or changes tacks rather, and says this is the perfect time to break the ice. But we've watched Nat try to break that ice, and it is thick with a whole bunch of C's.
Yeah.
Natalie says this is just male chauvinist manipulation. Even though Mrs. Garrett thought it would be fun, she throws up her hands.
Yep.
Tootie asks why she's so down on this. And it's clear. It's because she's been given the perfect opportunity to fall flat on her face and humiliate herself. And Ben says, oh, fuck no. But Nat is a pretty good counter argument. The dance was a guy's idea. And she's not going to ask a dude out just because he says it's okay. She's going to do it on her timetable. Right on, sister. I thought that was fine. That's not feminine. I mean, a little feminism there, but that's not, it's the cause of feminism and none of you can go out on dates. That's just like, I'll ask him out when I'm ready.
Listen,
okay, cool.
This
That's fine.
2 minutes, 90 seconds, where, she says, again, now Natalie is confronted with the choice of asking out the guy that she has a crush on, who clearly seems to be ignoring her at all times and not speaking to her directly in any way. He would rather run away with his folders than speak to her or acknowledge that she was right about the little Abner thing, right? So
he didn't say she was wrong. He was like, I guess.
Yeah, he was like, whatever. And like at this point, if I've lobbed up, like a few, like, kind of been like, hey man, that's cool that you came up with this. This was your idea, huh? And he's like, I guess. I gotta go talk to your teacher about the clam dip. Bye. Like, I would be disappointed too, and I wouldn't want to risk it. But I think it's actually, and so she does make a good point, which is, I might have asked him, if I'd been on my timetable, but this was all his idea, so now I don't want to.
Yeah, that would have been fine.
That's fine. And then Tootie's like, well, I want to go.
Yeah, Tootie wants to go, and I think I know who she wants to go with, and his name rhymes with Coy Lumber Blue.
No, it's like, well, I want to go. And then Natalie goes, no, you don't. And then
She gives her such a death stare.
And then Tootie's like, I want to.
Yeah. Nevertheless, she persisted. Even though Nat's able to rally Blair to agree that hell no, Blair's not going to this thing. It is the man's place to ask and the woman's place to trick him into it.
Uh-huh.
As you gloss your lips, I think you're like, that is actually accurate.
Listen, it takes two to tango. But clearly, like, if you're vibing with someone and you're like, hey man, and they're like, hey, you want to get a drink? Yeah, sure. That's, subtly getting them to do what you both want to do. I'm not above that. I asked my now husband out to get a drink.
It was Sadie Hawkins Day, right?
It wasn't November 15th. It was August, let's say August 28th or something like that.
I actually think that's right because I know that it was the date of the Thompson Twins concert, and I had that date on my heart calendar for months.
Yeah, because we went to go see the Thompson Twins together at the Greek, and then you dropped me off where I was having a drink with my now husband. So yeah, I mean, I'm not above like being like, hey man, you want to go get a drink? Yeah. But again, I think that Blair being like, well, I mean, it's against nature. That's not right. But, seducing someone into fulfilling they believe their gender role is, the things they're supposed to do, like ask, okay. That's Blair's MO.
Sure. So Joe enters and Natalie asks her the very same question. And of course, Joe's not going to go. Who in her right man would ask one of these mindless, spineless twerp faces anywhere? Mark my words, every last one of these bitches. Every one of them, down to Mrs. Garrett, they all would say yes or would ask a guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, now that the entire campus of 3 girls, Joe, Blair, and Natalie, have declined, there isn't really much point of a dance, is there? Nat gathers them up and claims to be as attractive as Nancy McKeon and Lisa Whelchel.
Yes.
And then suddenly makes it political, all because she doesn't want to be ashamed. It's the anti-Sadie movement, and Tootie's the only one not on board.
Yeah. Are you for us or against us? And I was like, and then Tootie and me were both like, you need to fucking relax.
Yeah.
You need to chill out. This is a dumb dance. Like, just stay home. And as you said, we're just going to hang out and eat like nobody's watching.
Like,
you know
you
what?
like animals.
You know what, Natalie? You do you. You fucking do you.
Yeah, and Nat keeps trying to change her plan of attack. She's like, well, if you want to go, maybe. She tries everything. She's trying, like, is it because you feel like a wallflower?
Yeah, she's like, if a girl stays home, if a
they're
girl stays home
independent.
if a girl stays home on a Saturday night when she could clearly be out getting railed, she's called a wallflower. But if a guy who stays home, on a Saturday night, it's because he's an incel. I mean, independent, a lone wolf. And so it's like, she's like, we have to reclaim, like, basically staying at home.
Yeah,
I mean,
gotta,
you know what?
shatter the stigma of the cat lady.
But also 2020, stay at home.
Yes, stay at home. Don't be a Natalie. So now, do be a Natalie. So now, Nat's going to pounce on that.
Yeah.
She blames Tootie for sacrificing everything that women have been fighting for, undermining the independence that her, Gloria, Helen Gurley Brown have been fighting so hard to achieve. She's willing to throw it all away for a crummy dance.
And what does Tootie do?
She's like, I'm going.
I think Tootie, there's a little bit of a rudder with Tootie. She just goes,
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
So would you like to tell us about Gloria and Helen Gurley Brown?
So
Bear in mind, we are
you-
an hour and 11 minutes into this podcast, and we are just getting out of the first scene.
Yeah, okay, but I don't have much to say about this. Sorry for all the little Abner.
Oh no, that wasn't your fault. We just have a lot to say in this episode in general.
Yeah. So I actually have to say, so we're talking about, so the way that Natalie phrases it is that she says, you're ready to undermine the independence that we, us, Eastland girls, we, and Gloria, and Helen Gurley have worked so hard to achieve. 1982, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she's talking about the Eastland School for Little Girls, Gloria Steinem, and I like the fact that she just doesn't use their last names, like they're on the first name basis, and Helen Gurley Brown. Obviously, everyone knows, I was like, including those two women together is a fucking flex. But clearly, these two male writers were like, who's the sexy feminist who, like, everyone wants to fuck, but, like, is actually a feminist, and who's the one that likes to fuck, but, like, all the other feminists hate because she runs that trashy magazine that it tells people how to give blowjobs. Oh yeah. Okay, let's just put those two together. Yes, that's feminism in a nutshell. But I was like, that's a fucking flex and very lazy. Anyway, so
that's feminism in a mouse burger.
Yes. So Helen Gurley Brown is very famous because she wrote Sex and the Single Girl in 1962. Because basically which dropped the bomb that unmarried women love to fuck. And they do. Just like everyone else. Anyway, it was a big deal. It was very shocking. She took over Cosmo, and she published that in 62. She took over Cosmo in 65, which was basically like a sort of like general interest magazine at the time. A little stodgy, boring. And then she came in and she was like, with the proposal that she was like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to call this magazine Femme. And it was going to be like all kinds of stuff. It was going to cover like, sex, beauty, career, money, how to get an apartment. But it was like, it like zhuzhed it up. It sexed it up. Nobody who worked at the magazine was like, I'm happy this is happening. Everyone was like, I hate this. Anyway, but it was actually very revolutionary. And as I read, she admired Gloria Steinem a lot, called herself a feminist. Just because she wore like fishnets and liked to get fucked didn't mean that, and give good blowjobs, didn't mean that she wasn't as much as a feminist. And so I think
they were good.
I don't know, but she was with her husband for a long time, and he was very devoted to her, and she him.
And you think it was because of the blowjobs?
I mean, those don't hurt.
True.
Unless they do hurt. Then they're doing it wrong.
I hate painful blowjobs.
Anyway, so basically, Helen Gurley Brown grew up, quote, genteel poor in Arkansas, and was always trying to compensate for her, quote, mouse burger origins. And so she was kind of felt always very mousy and lame. But she was actually very progressive, as I said, pro-abortion and contraception. Hugh Hefner was a fan. Gloria Steinem was a little publicly dismissive. And Joan Didion was sort of agnostic and wrote in a 1965 profile for the Saturday Evening Post that Brown seemed to her, quote, mostly very tired. So Gurley's brand of girl feminism was different than the sort of privileged, like as the kids would say these days, like white women privilege, like white women feminism, where it's sort of like that had a lot of gatekeeping, whereas Helen Gurley Brown's feminism was very much like, you can do this, you can get a new job, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Like if you want to go out and get a job, here's where you go. Here, you go, girl, kind of thing, you know. So I think part of that of her, as they said, the research that I did, her very appealing insecurity that like was a sort of through line came from the fact that she was her mom was born in the Ozarks in 1893, and her dad died in a freak elevator accident when she was 10. And so the family was poor and itinerant. And then she and her sister and her mom moved to LA, and she remarried. But the sister had polio, and Helen Gurley Brown had disfiguring acne. So she was always very much like, didn't have food, you know, couldn't go to like genteel college, had a fucked up face. So she was very much like, you know, use what you got, you know, if you have big eyes, emphasize those. If you have big lips, big tits, emphasize those. Like very much like progressive. But yeah, so she came up with the term, mouse burgers, where she was like, she wanted to take a mouse burger, which would be like a sort of a Natalie or a Tootie, and by the powers of just sheer will, you can transform yourself into a sex kitten. But second wave feminists accused her of treating women as sex objects, but she was equal opportunity. She did it with men too. She was responsible for the groundbreaking 1972 fully nude male centerfold of Burt Reynolds, totally naked on a bearskin rug, smoking a cigar.
I'm very familiar. Sorry, you have more?
Yeah. I feel like everyone basically understands who Gloria Steinem is and how Helen Gurley Brown was, you know, two sides of the same coin at this point.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so
well,
Natalie was basically saying, if you go to this fucking dance, Tootie, you are undoing 100 years of progress. If you go to this dance, women are not going to be able to vote.
I mean, she says at some point 10 semesters, which is only like 3.5 years.
I'll get to that later.
All right. Well, so now we're in the lounge where Mrs. Garrett and Tootie are in matching lavender, looking lovely. Tootie is
Tootie's on the phone.
Yeah, she's talking to Ron, apparently.
Ron.
And Mrs. Garrett is hard at work doing what I thought at the time was strudel math, but I learned it was not.
No, it was clearly Scrabble.
Tootie,
which is my least favorite board game.
That's because you're terrible at spelling.
I'm great at spelling. I just can't find the words. I always end up putting things down like bat or cat, and then like whoever else I'm playing with puts down like accordion or xylophone or something, and I'm like, oh no.
So Tootie weirdly says that she doesn't want to see this movie with anybody but Ron, which immediately tells me that she's seeing this movie with everybody else in town. It looks like Tootie just found the fun of asking boys out, and she didn't even have to say it. She's talking to one guy, and she's so weirdly confident, you just know that she has asked everybody out on campus. Mrs. Garrett gives her a judgmental head bob, but then she goes back to smiling because youth, much like strudel, is wasted on the young. It turns out she's tallying the score of Scrabble. It looks like Tootie is not going to have much time for board games anymore because she now has a little black book filled with little black cocks that she wants to fill her. Mrs. Garrett is sad.
Yeah.
Because she creamed Tootie, and Tootie's like, you know what? I'd rather be creamed by all these guys in this book.
Exactly. Like I got all this to do. Like I don't care about your old lady games.
Yeah, sexed up Tootie is really creepy. I'm glad she's empowered and stuff, but she's too young for this.
Yeah, it was very creepy because, so then like, so basically she explains, she's like, the Sadie Hawkins dance like really liberated me. Like just asking whoever, Kevin or Michael or whatever, I realized I can ask anyone. And Mrs. Garrett's like, yeah, that's the lesson of this is that it's equal opportunity. Anyone can ask anyone, and then Tootie's like, I could be in the library and ask a guy to the movies. And Mrs. Garrett's like, thank you for giving me an example of what you just said. And then she's like, I could be at the grocery store and ask a guy for pizza. And Mrs. Garrett's like, again, I got it. I know what you're saying. I understand. I just agreed with you at the top of this. And she goes, well, I could be standing on the street and ask some random no, you can't do that.
Yes, I laughed loudly. I audibly laughed at this. I knew the setup was coming. It was so clunkily done, but they were like, this joke is funny, but we have to get there somehow. Let's take the long way for some reason.
The audience and you apparently go fucking nuts about a joke about a little girl's horniness.
Yes. Well, no, not her horniness. About a little girl being mistaken for being a prostitute, which we know she already has a problem with because it's happened before.
If there's anyone in the cast of Facts of Life who looks like a little prostitute, it's Tootie Ramsey.
Hell yeah. Anyway, so Natalie enters and catches Tootie, realizing that she asked Kevin and Ron to the same movie. They're going to have to do it. She's going to have to see it twice. They really set that one up and knocked it out of the park.
No, it was great because, like, in comes, like, disapproving Natalie, who's like, here's Tootie. She's just, like, looking at her scheduling, being like, oh, rats. I guess I scheduled to see that movie with Kevin and Ron. Whatever. I'll see it both. I'll see it twice. That's fine. And Natalie's just like completely jealous of the fact that Tootie is swimming in dick.
Yes.
Like deeply upset. She's like,
she admits it later on.
I can't believe this is happening. And then goes to Mrs. Garrett to complain.
Well, she says even Warren Beatty has to take a break once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
Because Warren Beatty famously slept with 13,000 women, and I like that the show was trying to make sure that we were thinking about that.
Yeah.
Which is nothing compared to Wilt Chamberlain. Do you know how many people Wilt Chamberlain claims to have slept with?
So I think it was like, is it like 50,000? 20. Yeah. So it's so funny. So I was actually hosting a dinner party.
For Wilt Chamberlain?
For Wilt Chamberlain, and what I call dinner party, I mean he was having sex with me. No, I was actually hosting a dinner party with, shout out to my friend Aaron, who I saw this week. He was in attendance, and he would probably fondly remember this joke because we were talking about men like Warren Beatty and Wilt Chamberlain, men who famously had sex with thousands upon thousands of people, right? And we were just sort of like, I'm no prude, but like we were sort of being like, at some point, like, do you like, does it get boring? Like, is it just a sort of like, is every hole that different? And then I was like, do you think that like, at some point, he was like, hey, baby, can you put this rubber mask of my face on and then turn it around so that I can see what it looks like to fuck myself? Like, that's fun. That's fun for me to look as though I'm having sex with me. And then I was like, no. And then we were thinking, it's like, no. He'd probably just drill in a new fuck hole and fuck that. So that's my Wilt Chamberlain gross sex story.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
Nat complains to Mrs. Garrett about what a slut Tootie's being.
Yeah.
She's probably booked up till Christmas. Seasonal. Tootie proudly exclaims, "New Year's, whore."
Well, yeah, but actually, I have a question. Did you watch this with subtitles on?
Yes.
So what did Natalie say? She goes, honestly, Tootie, even Warren Beatty takes a break once in a while. When she goes to complain to Mrs. Garrett, she goes, "It's crazy. She's asking out everything in shoulders."
Yes.
What does that mean?
Because men have big shoulders.
Oh.
Like muscular shoulders.
Could it have been literally anything else?
Yes.
Anything with a penis? I
don't think they would have gone there.
No, but with shoulder,
They all can't be gems.
That doesn't even make sense.
No, I know it doesn't. There's a couple of things that don't make sense. I'm so excited to talk about Mrs. Garrett and her punch bowl later on.
Oh yes,
but we will get there. Anyway, so Mrs. Garrett
says, "I don't understand why you're boycotting the dance. It's like coming out against E.T."
I fucking hate E.T. So I hate E.T.
So you're with Natalie, and you almost said it, but then you stopped yourself.
I did, but no, I'm with Natalie about like hating on the Sadie Hawkins dance. I'm not with Natalie for any of the other reasons.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Tootie has plans to get fingered by E.T. on Christmas Eve, so he's booked.
With that magical light up finger.
Yes. The girls try to fight through Mrs. Garrett, telling her what to say to one another, but like Mrs. Garrett's like, "No, I don't like this at all." And so Mrs. Garrett says that Natalie can stand on her principles, but Mrs. Garrett is going to stand on her head. Ellipses. She pauses just long enough for everybody to be like, "Was that a joke?" It sounded like a joke, like the rhythm of a joke, but it's not a joke. No. And then she goes, "To meditate."
That also weird. Wasn't a joke.
That was really weird. They shouldn't do bits like that.
No, of course not, because it's not a bit. But again, the other thing about this is with Nat and Natoots is that they're both right. Feel liberated by the fact that you now feel as though you're allowed to ask men and you don't have to wait around, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also boycott this bullshit sexist nonsense tradition. All dances should be, everyone should ask anyone.
And fuck E.T.
And fuck E.T.
You can fuck E.T. the way Natalie does, coming out against it, or you can fuck E.T. the way Tootie does, letting him inside you. Anyway, so Tootie's really enjoying her sexual liberation, but Nat has a more exciting plan. Her, Blair, and Joe are going to stay home, get comfy, eat like animals.
Yeah.
Without any guys watching, which has literally been me since March. But also, it's so sad when Natalie says it.
I know.
When I do it.
But it was also really sad what Tootie said. She was like,
yes.
"Well, I'd rather eat like a bird with guys watching."
Yes, I wrote, which also sounds sad, if not sadder. So I would agree with you there.
Like, I don't, excuse you. I don't eat when I'm around other men because I don't want them to see me do something that is a human bodily function. It's like, it's depressing.
Well, I try not to like poop in front of guys I want to date.
Really? You try not to?
It's happened. Speaking of sad, Tootie points out that no one is believing all this women's lib bullshit that Natalie's been spewing. And if she's scared to call Ben, Tootie will happily do it for her. She's done it with every other boy at Bates, after all.
I know.
Nat screams that this has nothing to do with Ben.
Yeah. Ben has nothing to do with this.
At all.
And it's like, as soon as you keep screaming, Ben has nothing to do with this, we all know Ben has everything to do with this. Is all Ben related.
And then Blair walks in from the secret door.
Yes, the
so
secret door
excited about
from the library. But also, here's my other question about Ben. They go out. Do we ever see Ben ever again?
Of course not.
No. Okay. Cool. Just want to get that out of the way because he's so important to Natalie.
Of course, when you are 14 and there's a boy that you like and he may or may not like you, that's very important.
Of course it is. But then, you know what? if he's ignoring me constantly and treating me like shit and running away from, visibly backing away from me with his folders, then I'm going to be heartbroken and keep that heartbreak to myself.
Understood. Well, anyway, Blair walks in with news at the library. Everybody was talking about how this Sadie Hawkins Day thing is the hottest club in Peekskill.
Yeah, it has everything. Human toilets, human suitcases, men in drag.
Two human things. She'll simply die if she doesn't go. Yeah. Blair's image is at stake. It would make her look like a Natalie.
Someone who was rejected.
Exactly. So Blair decides to treat it like a charity. Some lucky boy is going to get the opportunity of a lifetime, an over-the-pants rub by one Miss Blair Warner. Natalie's worried that everyone's going to find out that she's asking a boy. Oh, no, Blair's going to be humiliated. And Blair's like, I'm actually kind of titillated by that.
Yeah. She's like, Blair Warner's on the prowl. A wink here, a smile there. And then one by one, they're drawn to me like moths to a flame.
Yes.
And then Natalie says, blow out your candle, Blair. And it's just like, you know what, Natalie? Like, have your neurosis somewhere else.
But I did think that Lisa Whelchel did a good job with this monologue. I thought this was pretty funny. Like, she didn't have to, like, bring it as hard as she did with, like, waving to people and, like, her eyes sparkling at the recognition of a wink and things like that. I thought it was very funny. Yeah. All right. So are you just never going to like this show, I think. Blair monologues, and then, wouldn't you believe it, Joe comes in.
From the mysterious door that leads to the library as well as the arcade.
Pretty fucking cool.
I mean,
I want to go through that door. I'd be happy ending up on either side of it, wherever I go. If I'm at the arcade, great. Arcade in 1982, awesome. If I'm at Eastland in 1982, that's cool too. I'll figure it out.
Library?
The
one that was founded by, that was given the money by the KKK member?
I mean, the Blair Library then. If that's the case, I'm fine with that. I wouldn't mind being at the Blair Library. So anyway, yes. So Joe was playing some video games at the arcade when all of a sudden, 1982 Tron champion East Coast Division walks in. Mitch himself. Joe can't help herself. She is sucked in by his Tron skills. She asks him to the dance. Boom. They've all fallen like dominoes in the span of 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Blair's horrified that anybody at Bates even goes to the arcade. It's part of the overall moral decline.
Yeah, you met a Bates boy at the arcade. It's part of the overall moral decline. And I was like, I literally wrote down, Blair, Bates boys are rapists. What are we talking about? Arcade?
Yeah, they're supposed to be raping, not playing Pac-Man.
Yeah, not playing Tron.
Jesus. So
get back to your raping.
I really miss arcades. Like not like the cool ones that are around now that have like craft beers and hipsters, but like just regular ones. What?
I'm giving you the finger because that's like my favorite place that I haven't been able to go to in during the pandemic.
Well, I mean, I like those, but I really like arcades that have no alcohol and no drunk people and everything's a quarter. Like that, just that atmosphere, you're just playing video games and that's it, is very nice to me.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. My, as you say, hipster, drunk, arcade bar, where everything, everyone's drunk. No, everything does cost a quarter. The arcades that you're talking about where no one's drunk and nothing costs a quarter in those anymore in 2020, it's always like $4 for 15 seconds.
I don't want that either. I'm not saying those are good. I'm just saying, like, back when I was a kid and you used to get invited to birthday parties and you have to stand on a little milk crate so that you could play Dig Dug. I liked that vibe. I want that vibe with some Elio's pizza at the end. That's just what I'm looking for. I think Barcade is great. I'm glad that those things exist and I enjoy them for sure. But I'm saying what I'm longing for is a simpler time.
Yeah, which is why we're watching this fucked up show from 1982. Yeah, very simple.
That's why I've sucked you into it, my dysfunction. So Natalie starts monologuing loudly about her principles. And she's freaking the fuck out. She needs clarity. Joe explains she's going to the dance. She wants to go. She's going. No big.
Yeah,
But
she's like, I changed my mind. And then Natalie goes, oh, you're going to set us back 10 semesters.
Yeah.
So
is she counting summer session?
No, so that's just like a very big regular. That's a phrase of like, oh, you know what?
I know what it is.
No, it's the you're gonna set us back 10 years.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm just saying when she says 10 semesters, is she counting summer semesters? Because if she's counting summer semesters, that shifts the time frame to very short. That's all I'm saying. I understood yeah.
Okay.
I get where it came from. Anyway, she starts monologuing about her principles, and everybody just leaves sick of her bullshit. As I know,
she's just
must be.
She's screaming at the couch.
Yeah, she is. She shouts, "When they refuse your subscription to Ms. Magazine, don't come running to me." They're obsessed with Ms. Magazine. That's like a beacon of feminism.
Well, it is.
Yeah, but it's like their one and only reference in this show many, many times.
Gloria Steinem co-founded Ms. So it's like Ms. Magazine, and Cosmo. So we have Gloria and Helen Garley Brown.
So it's just magazines.
Magazines about women.
Yes.
And women's issues and things that they're interested in.
Yes.
So yeah they are just magazines, but
I'm not saying they're just magazines. What I'm saying is that the two people of the feminist movement that she pulled were both magazine creators. And maybe it should have been like one and then somebody else. Like, I don't know.
Right. Well, so remind me again, who wrote this episode?
Oh, that would be the duo of Gore and Jacobius.
Yeah, so two dudes who did less than a smattering of research.
Potentially. We are out of that act, however, and we are back in the lounge. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, we're in the cafeteria.
We're back in the cafeteria is what I meant to say. It's a new day, but that hasn't changed Natalie's mood. She is still moaning and whining.
I wrote down that she's fucking screaming. She's screaming alone about the dance. And she's like, I don't want to go to this stupid dance to Mrs. Garrett. Mrs. Garrett's like, you need to shut the fuck up. And just ask
just for the millionth time that
she's
Natalie
just like, listen, I can't hear you do this anymore. Just ask someone. Ask someone. And then she goes, it's perfectly acceptable these days. That's what all those Harvey Bristol cream commercials are all about.
Yes, so I watched a couple of these, and I sent you a couple as well. I'm assuming you watched them.
Yes, of course.
They are remarkable.
Yeah, this lodged in my mind. Did they make a similar joke about Harvey's Bristol cream on a different episode? Because I know a lot about Harvey's Bristol cream from researching before. Because Harvey's Bristol cream is a sherry that is imported to England from Spain. And in the late 70s, they, like a lot of companies, started basing their marketing and their advertising around the women's liberation movement. So it was sort of like Virginia Slims. It was like, these are the smoke lady cigarettes. Like, you can choose the lady one. And then it was like in 1978 or whatever, like when the Harvey's Bristol cream commercial was basically, it was like, it's some woman like on Christmas as well being like, basically like calling up a dude being like, hey, I just have something that I want to sneak under your Christmas tree. Is that cool if I come over and sneak something up your Christmas tree? And this guy is just like, yeah, of course. And she's like, hangs up. She's like, sweet. And then she picks up her bottle of Harvey's Bristol cream, which again, weird thing being like, you know what I brought you? Some Harvey's Bristol cream. And it's like, of course, no person would ever be like, oh my God, you brought me some Harvey's Bristol cream. I love this shit. Oh my God, let's fuck. But it's like,
But yes, that's what I mean. I watched multiple commercials
Yeah.
where it was about women trying to seduce men by inviting themselves over with Harvey's Bristol Cream, as though all men are powerless once Harvey's Bristol Cream is brought into the mix.
Well, it was like, and like a couple of the commercials, like the other commercials, aside from the incredibly amazing 1986 racist one, which was just appalling.
Yeah. There's also a 90s one that's just so 90s, but the same concept, and it was just cute that it happened. But anyway,
but it's basically like Harvey's Bristol Cream was sort of like, you're a liberated woman. You can invite yourself over. You can invite yourself over to a man's house to get plowed. Like,
yeah,
do it, but be sure to bring the Harvey's Bristol Cream.
Otherwise, you won't be able to get it up.
Because that's the thing. Men, they don't like anything else. They only like very, very sweet fortified sherry.
They crave sherry and pussy, but sherry first, so then they want the pussy.
So to get the pussy all creamy.
Yes.
Yes.
So anyway, Tootie comes in and asks if anybody called. Natalie says, yeah, the phone company, to thank her for reaching out and touching everyone.
And I was like, I honestly, like, Tootie comes in, she's like, yeah, the phone is, where are my messages, And Natalie's like, yeah, the phone company called because they called to thank you for reaching out to everyone and touching everyone. And it's like she's like in slut shaming her supposedly best friend, right? Mm-hmm. But also delivers this sick burn like a child would. She does
delivers it and then she looks at the camera.
And then she's like,
that was a good one. She's like, she's so pleased with herself. It's great.
She's like,
good.
I can't, you know how there's like this trope in like movies and TV where it's always like, it's like they do it in like, You've Got Mail, where it's like, you ever have that problem where like, you're having a fight and right in the moment, you can never think of the right insult to say at the right time. I always have that. And then I get home and I'm stewing over it, and then I come up with the perfect insult, the exact perfect rejoinder, and then I just stew over that, and I'm upset. Natalie does not suffer from that in this. She's just like straight to the guttural. She's just like, you know what, Tootie, you're a fucking slut, and the phone company knows. And then it's just like, yeah,
nailed it.
She's like, round of applause to myself. I did that.
I feel like that was totally Mindy Cohen. That was like, I had a theory when I watched this, was that she probably had a much safer line that didn't involve masturbating strangers, or at least evoking images of that in people's head. So that line probably existed, and then they were like, hey, let's do this wild one. We'll see if we can get it past the censors, and if the network lets us, then we'll have it. And then they were like, it's never going to fly. And then Mindy Cohen delivers it being like, oh, that one was dirty. I got that one. Like, that was the vibe I got from Mindy Cohen, was like, that one I got, and that was crazy.
No, and also it delighted the audience.
Yes.
And again, much like a lot of the other, like weird jokes, we just came off of an advertisement reference. This is another advertisement reference. It's like we always need to do these
back to back.
Yeah.
Not even like a line in between them.
No.
So once again, Tootie tells Natalie to ask Ben out.
Sorry, I just need to, speaking of, sorry, I just need to go back to Harvey's Bristol Cream for just 1 second. Sure. Because I need to say one thing about it. So the catchphrase for the I'm inviting myself over to suck your dick, women's lib Harvey's Bristol Cream is, when you're serving Harvey's Bristol Cream, it's more than respectable. It's downright upright. Yes. Which it's like basically the implication is, which is how your dick better be. Rock hard and upright. Like,
I feel like your mind is more in the gutter than even mine. But yes, I definitely was like, that's a terrible play on words, and that I thought it was just bad, but I didn't think about dicks when I heard it, but you of course did. Downright upright. Anyway.
Downright upright? Come on.
Next time, if I ever get to make love to a man again, when I see his erect penis, that's what I'll say. I'll say, well, that is downright upright. And we'll see how it goes.
He's gonna go, hey, do you have any Harvey's Bristol cream?
And I'll be like, I told you I was bringing it. That's the only reason you let me over.
Exactly. It's Christmas, and I'm a liberated woman.
Yeah. So anyway,
So
once again,
Tootie's like, okay, I absorb your hostility.
Yes.
Thank you for saying that I'm mass masturbating everyone in the phone book, but you need to cool it. You need to chill out and just call Ben and ask. And then Natalie flips out again and is like, that's not what this is about.
But then she's like, immediately after, she's like, and even if it was, he would probably already have a date.
Yeah.
And then Mrs. Garrett's like, not yet.
Yeah.
I am a spy for the dance committee.
Yeah. She goes, Mrs. Garrett turns around, she goes, well,
you know, I'm not a Badinsky.
Badinsky. Can you not say that?
Badinsky. Sorry, I tripped over my two T's.
Well, when I heard it, I was like, I remember my third grade teacher saying that, and I did not know that was like a thing people said.
I mean, maybe when you were in third grade.
Well, I just hadn't heard it in decades. So her being like, I'm not a Badinsky. I was like,
and
oh, that
like,
works.
And they're like, yeah,
Sure.
Cough up the information, Mrs. Garrett. Stop this. And then she's like,
well, also, you know that I don't overhear other people's private conversations.
And they're like, yes, but
what do you know?
Tell us. Stop this charade. You could have stopped this at the beginning of the episode, Mrs. Garrett, if you just said, you know what, Natalie, your crush has a crush on you. So let's not use feminism.
But she does not know that fact. She doesn't. She just suspects it. Because all her info here is just that Eunice Schramm is gearing up, and she does this, gearing up to ask Ben to the dance. That doesn't mean that Ben doesn't already have a date, but apparently that's how Tootie takes it, because she starts freaking out. She's like, Nat, you gotta pick up the phone now before it's too late. This is your chance. You're gonna be single forever. Nat points out what I've been feeling, which is that Tootie has only said one thing this whole episode, and that is, ask Ben to the dance. It's like, shut up, she heard you.
Yeah.
Anyway, Nat finally admits what we're all... Sorry?
I'm sorry. I have to, because I didn't Google this, because it was a missed opportunity completely. But the fact that, so like Mrs. Garrett is, spying on these little children at the social dance committee, whatever, to give private information to, her two favorite students, Natoots. And she's like, well, I did see that, I got the impression that he was going to be asked out by Eunice Schramm. What kind
Eunice.
What?
It's Eunice.
Oh, Eunice. But this was the name they decided to go with? They didn't go with Jenny Thompson.
No, because we remember it. We're talking about it right now. It's 2020. This shit happened 38 years ago. We're still talking about Eunice Schramm, and guess what? She doesn't even fucking exist. So that means that they did their job. Also, maybe there's a real Eunice Schramm.
Exactly, which is why I should look it up, and it's gonna be like Eunice Schramm on LinkedIn. Do you know Eunice Schramm?
I agree. That was a missed opportunity on both of our parts.
But I also, it felt like it's such a unique, an odd name that just sticks out and is so memorable. Are you looking it up?
Yeah, of course.
It to me seemed as though it was like it was like a personal friend of the writers.
It is. There's a real Eunice Schramm. She is a actress, a Broadway actress, it seems. She was in Patience in 1928. And she played Lady Ella. That's basically the one thing that this Eunice Schramm did, but apparently somebody knew her somewhere, because that's
Very,
not an
very
accident.
local, very, reasonable,
Also,
reference to an actress, Broadway actress from 1928.
I'd also like to say that I'm really pleased because I spelled it in my notes, and then I just guessed the same spelling in my notes. SCHRAMM. There was a lot of places I could have gone, but I felt like there was two M's. I felt like there was an SCH. I'm really proud of myself. That's all.
Well done.
Thank you. Anyway, so Tootie starts freaking out. She's got to call Ben right now before it's too late. And
Mhm.
Natalie finally admits what we all know. She's afraid of the answer. She can't handle the rejection. We've been seeing this on her face. We knew this before she even opened her mouth this episode. But she says, what is she going to do? She's going to call him and be like, hey, this is Natalie. And he's going to be like, who? The fat one? Anyway, Mrs. Garrett is still sure that he was looking at Nat.
I'm like, Natalie, I see how he looks at you.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, he doesn't look at me. He looks at my loafers. And it's like she calls up. She's like, hi, is this Ben? It's like, yeah, who's this? It's Natalie. Natalie who? Natalie Loafers. Then he would be like, oh, yeah. Okay, so what do you need? What do you want?
Well,
anyway,
Mrs. Garrett explains a fucking dark story.
Mrs. Garrett is like, listen, when I was your age, when I was in high school, she tells this incredibly unpleasant story about.
It's really fucked up. Steve Dugan in 7th grade hit her on the head with a book bag hard
every day.
For 2 years.
For 2 years. And all of her friends are like, he likes you. And she's like, what? No, he hits me. And they're like, no. He likes you. He likes you.
When the boys hit you, that's good.
Yeah. And then Natalie's like, and okay. And then Mrs. Garrett goes, and then 2 years later, we went steady.
She didn't say that. I listened to this. She said 2 years later, he asked her to go steady.
Oh.
Now, I assume she just did because the man asked, so you have to do it, right? But I thought it was interesting that she didn't say, and I said, fuck no, because you hit me on the head for 2 years, you asshole. Like, that's a possibility. She's kept it open, and I'm thankful that she hasn't said, and I said yes.
Oh.
But I assume she said yes.
She was telling this story as like when like the hurt that you feel is actually a sign of affection. That's how she was telling this story.
She was telling the story, but yes, definitely. But she did not say whether or not she reciprocated. She only said that he liked me, he hit me, and my friend said he liked me, and I didn't believe them. And then he admitted it 2 years later and asked me to go steady. But she never goes, and I said I liked him back. I went out with him. She doesn't say any of that. It's implied heavily, and I'm not trying to say it's not. But it's never explicitly said, and I am appreciative of that.
Jesus Christ. Who do you, Mrs. Garrett's lawyer?
Yes. Regardless, Nat's sad because Ben doesn't even elbow her in the hall.
Yeah, this show fucking normalizes violence towards children, towards women.
I feel like that was like a whole thing. Like in the 80s, everybody was saying, "Oh, does he pull your hair? That means he likes you."
Yeah, it was.
It was a fact. It was a fact of life.
It was a fact. It was a fact. It was a fact. Yeah, no, it wasn't a fact. That was normalizing it. It wasn't a fact.
Well, regardless, the phone rings, and then Natalie just looks at Tootie and goes, "It's for you." And Tootie goes, "How do you know?" And Nat goes, "'Cause it's ringing." And that was my favorite joke of the whole episode. I laughed so hard at that. Yet again, when Mrs. Garrett says when Tootie's off the phone, Nat should call Ben, give it a try. It's another time. Nat explains it's hard to leave yourself open to that sort of humiliation, which is fair. It is.
Yeah, it is. And then she's like, Natalie opens up about, she's like, I'm worried about being rejected and how she feels vulnerable and how she's like, do you really even understand it's like that, how hard it is to do that? And Mrs. Garrett goes, well, it's tough, but guys have to do it all the time. I wrote down, no, bad Mrs. Garrett.
It is tough for guys to do.
Yeah, but it's tough for everyone. But again, the Sadie Hawkins thing is they're sneaking in this like message of like anyone can ask anyone, but like,
but not this week.
not this week.
I'm sorry, Natalie says she'd rather stay home with the jack of clubs. Is that an expression?
No.
Okay. I wondered because it felt
It's
really
just because I mean,
because she wants to play cards.
Yeah, but they should have named the character Ben rather than Ben. They should have named the character Jack, so that she could have said, "I'm so afraid of rejection that rejection is too scary, so I'm gonna stay home with the Jack of clubs, Ben of clubs."
Well, next time, it's 1982. We'll see if we can get you in the room. And then it doesn't
Joe
matter.
comes back. Mitch is going out of town, so she's not going to the dance because Mitch has to go to a Tron competition.
Yeah, the Tron World Cup or some shit. So Natalie's positively glowing.
Yeah, she is so excited. She goes up and this is where Natalie does all of the most annoying Natalie tics. It's that glottal,
like little voice that she can barely get out, and she just goes, "Oh, Joe, you must feel awful."
You are getting good at these.
And then Joe's
give a
like,
fuck,
"What are you
though.
talking about? Why? Maybe he'll win. I don't know."
Yeah, I could be dating a Tron world champion.
That sounds
good.
dope. It's in 1982. You could go around the world for that.
Yeah, that's about as cool as it gets in 1982. Then, and this was really weird, Mrs. Garrett, apropos of nothing, begins caressing a giant punch bowl and goes, "I've never been crazy about this punch bowl. Maybe I'll get lucky and somebody will drop it." What was this?
What was this? Also, for people who are watching the visual podcast, she does. I'm going to demonstrate it. She does this around the edges of her bowl, but with both hands. It's odd.
It's so odd. It's weirdly delivered. It's a weird thing to say. It never comes into play again. It's bananas.
It's repellent. And I thought it was going to lead to something. I thought it was going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to bring this punch bowl over to the Sadie Hawkins dance."
Right. Even then, that barely makes sense. It would have to be like, it's the magical punch bowl that when broken, two people fall in love if they get cut by the punch bowl. Like something stupid. But no, this made no sense. And also, if you hate your punch bowl so much and somebody shatters it, you still have to buy a new one. So if you hate this punch bowl so much, buy a new one. Give this away to some needy, thirsty people. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, all those needy, thirsty people who drink out of punch bowls.
So then Tootie comes in and announces that Michael found out that she's been a dirty, dirty whore, doesn't want to go to the dance with her anymore, and suddenly all the dominoes are starting to stand up again. If that's an expression. Nat tells her to go to her bullpen and pick somebody else, and Tootie lights up as if she couldn't have thought of that on her own. She's like, "Oh yeah, I've been fucking everybody. Why didn't I think of that?" Nat's
and then
pissed off.
Natalie screams. She goes, "I don't believe her."
And then she very quiet.
I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
I felt bad for her there. I think that was a good moment.
Even though she's been, even though the entire episode she's been delighting in other people's misery.
No, she's only been doing that recently. Everybody was just happy before.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, then what should be a shock to no one.
Oh, sorry. No, so early in the episode she was shaming everyone.
Yeah.
Now she's moved on to being delighted in their misery.
Exactly. Totally different.
Okay.
So then what should be a shock to no one who's ever seen a sitcom before, the last domino goes upright. Blair walks in, fretting about how she lined up all her men like ducks in a shooting gallery, and she picked Donald Duck, but she waited too long, and now he's going with somebody else. So she asked Huey, Dewey, and Louie, but they were all taken as well. Blair Warner is not going to the social event of the season. Why name this guy Donald if you're not going to make a Donald Duck joke?
They did.
They didn't.
She lined them all up like ducks.
And she picked one guy.
Donald.
They didn't
duck.
put a laugh track in. They didn't pause for a laugh. They just said, I picked this guy named Donald.
The duck.
They didn't say that, though. They
Donald, she lined them all up like ducks, and then she chose Donald. I thought the implication was very clear. Just the association of like, I lined them up like ducks, and then I chose Donald. Wah, wah.
It felt like Donald was his real name, and that this was not a joke. It felt like
it isn't a joke, but
it felt like it was like 2 steps towards a joke that was 12 steps away.
So I thought that was an okay way to make a half a joke, because she said she lined up all of her prey, and then like ducks, and then chose one, Donald. And the audience would just go, oh, lol, Donald the duck.
But they didn't, or they did it the way you. Oh, lol, up here, quietly lolling.
Because it's not a real joke. It's just like an association joke.
Yeah, it could have been a joke. We're on a sitcom. We're watching a sitcom.
What? We are? I actually didn't know that. I thought this was a very serious drama.
So once again,
this actually was a reality show, to be perfectly frank.
Once again, Natalie is fucking lighted in the misery of her pals. She reminds me of the depression cat on Big Mouth.
Yes, Jean Smart.
Mm-hmm. Tootie comes out with a complicated web of men that she assumed she was going out with other men, but it all led back to some dude named Kyle, who she doesn't even know. And I thought that was a cute bit too. I thought that was Tootie's
a cute bit, but that is a cute bit. But I was a little bit distracted by the fact that did she call one dude, and then he was like, well, did she call Ron? And then Ron was like, well, I heard that you were fucking Michael. And then Michael told me that you were fucking Daryl. And then Daryl told me that you already asked him to go to the movies on Thursday when you were going to go out on a date with Kyle on Thursday. Did that all happen through one dude? Or did she call all of these people because it took 3 seconds for her to be in the phone?
She was gone for a decent chunk of time. No. Not as long as, was it Natalie, like 2 episodes ago, that like went... she was gone for like 2 scenes, and I just heard one thing on the phone. This is the opposite of that. Yes. So I do feel like the way I heard it, the way I imagined it, was that he was like, "No, I heard you going out with Doug. Who'd you hear that from? Bob. Okay." And then she calls Bob. She's like, "Bob, why are you saying I'm going out with Doug? Because you're going out with this guy, that guy, the other guy. Yeah. Nobody trusts you." Like maybe 2 calls.
Okay.
That's how I'm
glad we figured this out.
Anyway, yeah, so the Natalie's panties are overflowing at this point. Everybody is so sad, and she's so happy.
She's so horny with her friend's despair.
Yes.
And she's getting worse and worse. She's like, great, there's 4 of us now, we can play bridge.
Yeah. Although
we can talk and laugh and share intimate secrets.
Yeah, she calls them, she's like, we're all bright and funny girls. I noticed this. Once adding Tootie into the mix, she doesn't call them a bunch of attractive girls. Now that Tootie's in the mix, she's downgraded them to bright and funny, which seems a little rude, if you ask me.
Yes, it does. Very rude.
But everybody's pissed off. Even Joe, who didn't even seem to mind having her invite declined, is like, you suck.
Yes.
But now it is the big night of the dance and our final scene. All of our girls are in their PJs. They're playing poker. So Nat basically got her way. And she looks pretty pleased. They're playing for cookies. Natalie is smoking a pretzel cigar. This could not be cuter.
I was like, this could not be duller.
Also, what the fuck weird way to open this scene with the camera on the girls'
on the feet.
What was that? And like, sure, okay, maybe Tootie's got cute Cookie Monster slippers, but Joe's incredibly dirty socks? Why do we need to see this? This was, again, not a plot point, much like the Punch Bowl. I assumed that Nancy McKeon was like, I'm going to go get, like, a fruit roll-up over there, and, like, walked through the stage to craft service, came back, and her feet were disgusting, and they were like, we're out of socks. This is what she's got to wear.
And then the Azad Kalata was like, whatever, we're doing the sock shot no matter what. Okay?
Yeah, no, I think he saw that and he's like, oh man, I have gold. Hang on.
Maybe.
Anyway, so Tootie asks for 6 cards, even though it's 5-card draw, and Tootie is a poker savant for at least 3 years running at this point. So I thought that was fucked up.
Yeah. What the hell? There's no continuity.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as you said, she is a poker savant. Where the fuck is her visor?
Yeah, where's her poker visor? What the hell, guys? So Tootie asks for 6 cards. I said that. Blair's. I liked Blair with the green face mask.
Yeah.
Looking at Joe's cards and Joe just slapping her away. I like that whole bit. No notes. This is starting to feel like the show I love. This scene of them around the table was like the kind of aspect that I like of the show. Like when Blair goes on about how she owed herself this facial for a month. She's trying to see the bright side of things. And then Joe's like, don't flake into the pretzels. I loved it.
So what you're saying is that you're really enjoying this this moment. This feels more like the show that you recall very fondly, where literally everyone is sitting around very passive aggressively, not discussing their very open hostility for one another.
Yep.
And disappointment at not doing the thing that they wanted to do, and having to hang out hang out on a Saturday night with their worst fucking friend.
Yes, I always love the idea of a bunch of people's plans falling through and everybody has to stay home on a Saturday night. I like those episodes. I really do.
You know what that is? That's 2020. We all have to stay home. All
with their friends. I have no friends. I've been alone for, 10 months? I've been alone for a while here. It's not that. If this was that, I would be fine. If I had one person here, it would be great. I got a cardboard Smurf and a cat that's just starting to learn English.
Well, that's good. Congratulations, Greg.
Thank you. I'm trying my ass off. Anyway, so Blair's now dealing.
Yeah.
Wait, hang on. So I liked how Natalie says that Blair's taking her first dateless Saturday night really well.
You like that?
Well, I liked how
you enjoyed that incredibly passive aggressive bullshit thing to say to someone who's clearly delusional.
No, and you're being very confrontational, so I can't get through my comedy bits the way I time them. My point is that I liked how I liked what Blair was doing. I did not like Natalie asking the questions. I liked that Blair had basically laid out a roadmap for the Republican Party. I'm declaring this Thursday night, and Joe is Newsmax being like,
just go with it.
Thursday
it's
night.
Fine.
It's
Let
fine.
her believe that. We'll be better off if you don't talk about Saturday night, dateless Saturday nights.
Yeah, just give Blair a little time to process the fact that she lost the election. So now Blair is dealing 3s, 7s, and one-eyed jacks are wild. Joe's like, we could have basically were playing bridge.
Yeah.
None of this is necessary. But then Nat asks Tootie how she could be such a slut and ask all those guys out. Tootie takes the pretzel penis out of her mouth and explains, I was young, dumb, and full of cum back then. Now I know I was just a stupid kid. This is terrible that I was calling all these boys. What a mistake. Don't be liberated. It only gets you hurt.
Yeah. And then
the message that we leave to
Natalie's like, I didn't think it was stupid. I thought it took guts.
That was cool.
Yeah, so we finally get to the heart of the matter.
Yes.
But
we don't get to linger
away from the end of the episode.
Yeah, and we don't get to linger there because Mrs. Garrett
arrives.
Apparently in her finery, because everybody, including the audience, is like, woo.
Well, it was a nice red top.
She looks like something that she would wear almost any day.
That bright red top, much like yours. Your very fetching red top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, come and fetch.
And also, I do think that if I recall correctly, I do think that the top that Mrs. Garrett is wearing on her date, it also says, "Where's the beef?" on it.
I hope so. So Mrs. Garrett is apparently asked Professor Clayton to the dance. And they're like, oh, you guys are chaperoning? And she's like, no, he's chaperoning moi.
Moi.
This is Howard all over again. Mrs. Garrett fucks y'all.
Yeah.
She fucks hard.
She does.
So then Ben enters and Blair screams, a man! And then throws her cards in the air and ducks under the table. Super subtle. And apparently, Ben doesn't even notice this.
No, she screams. She goes, "Ah, a man!" And then goes under the table.
Cards up in the air.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this very much. Mrs. Garrett apparently knew, but conveniently forgot to mention that he was coming by. Blair's going to have some strong words about that from under the table, which was surprising. He came to pick up tablecloths and records for the dance, but apparently she forgot to tell the girls Blair's still hiding. And
Yeah.
yet not being very subtle about her hiding, decides to chastise Mrs. Garrett from under the table. And then Ben, who is apparently not the sharpest clam in the dip, is like, is there somebody under there? No, Ben, it's a fucking talking table. Likes to yell at Mrs. Garrett randomly. What are you fucking thinking, dude? How did you not notice the giant green women throwing her cards up in the air and screeching?
Yeah. And also, apparently, according to the number one reason why Natalie has a crush on this Ben person is that he's so smart.
Yeah.
He seems like he might be a drummer on a different beat.
Very true. So Blair pokes her green head out from under the table, gives a sheepish hi. And then realizing that he might be more like Leo than she initially thought, she decides to pull one over on him.
Yeah, I'm Bonnie Warner.
Bonnie Warner, Blair's cousin. Joe ends that immediately for no reason. She's just like, cut the bull, Blair. And Blair fesses
also,
up.
At this point, so right after Ben enters and Bonnie / Blair screams and hides, Natalie just hops up, awkwardly walks upstage in front of everyone and doesn't hide, just lurks. Just is like, over here.
You want to look at my flannel nightie?
Yeah, my red flannel nightie. Like, she could have just gone upstairs, but I guess she just wanted to lurk and stare at her crush.
Yes, well, Ben, for the first time, has noticed her. Perhaps it is the flannel nightie, because he's like, hi.
I mean, that nightie was pretty erotic.
Yeah, well, he completely ignores Tootie and Joe at this point.
Yeah.
He's just like, hi, Natalie. She's like sneaking away. Maybe it's the no bra underneath the flannel pajamas.
I think it might be the no bra. It also could just be just the sheer knowledge that the only thing between him and her pubis and nipples is a thin yet thick layer of cotton flannel.
Yes. Mrs. Garrett does that thing where she tries to clear all the other girls out of the room so the main storyline can finish. No B-plot this week, so she was like,
it's clear that it's like Mrs. Garrett has schemed to get them along. And she's like, girls, can you help me with my punch records and the flannel
tablecloths? That's what she has.
Tablecloths? Yeah, but it's sort of like, she's just sort of like, da-da-da, and they're all like, wait, we're out here playing poker. Why do we need to help? Why are you pushing? Why are you pushing? Stop pushing. I'm coming, you know?
So then Mrs. Garrett assigns Natalie to help Ben with the records. Super subtle.
Yeah, Natalie's, and he's like, where are the records? And she's like, in the cabinet.
She takes Ben into the lounge of exciting conclusions, where most of the episodes seem to end these days.
Yeah.
And he says he's in no rush. He's got plenty of time, and Nat weirdly goes, "That's all any of us have been time."
I know. We're
okay.
existential, like, yeah, that's all we ever have.
And so he's like, "So I thought you were going to the dance," and she's like, "No," and he says, "Me neither," and she's like, "What about fucking Eunice Schramm?" And he's like, "Nah, she's a scuzz. The girl I wanted to go with didn't ask me." Classic male manipulation right there. But
right
Nat
there?
certainly doesn't have a problem with it. No, because she can see the writing on the wall and she's about to get laid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he says, "I want you to know we would have had a great time." And she's like,
We, I'm sure you would.
You're into this?
I'm sure you would have. We? What? Me?
And she drags this out, making it super painful for everybody involved. It's almost as though there were 2 more minutes left in the episode, and they were like, "Stretch, guys. make it up. I don't care. Because she's like, it almost sounded like you were asking me out. And he goes, I wasn't. Because he's a stickler for the rules.
Yeah.
He's like, she's
like, I can't, my hands are tied. My dick is tied to my balls and it's stuffed in my ass. I literally
like, I was not asking you that. She's like, okay, I'm just going to kill myself with one of these broken Nancy Donna Summer records. I'll just end it here. And he's like, no, I can't ask you out. You have to ask me out, you moron. And she still like, does not have enough self-esteem to say, oh, cool, you want to go? No, she's like, you want me to ask you out? It's like, how can you stretch this to...
Wait. Can you explain it again? So you can't ask me because of this, because we can't go. So wait, you need me to go to the dance, tell you about it, and then we can go. And then you go to the dance, and then we come back here and
he is really afraid of Sadie Hawkins regulations. Like, is there a fine? Do you go to jail? What happens if you break this? Because he will not do it.
No.
So
no, because I think that's partly it has to do with where it's sort of like, I tried to get you to do the thing that I was too afraid to do. Right?
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up.
And she's like, well, I don't want to do it either. And then it's like these two, pussy like cowards being like, well, I don't. Should we? So you do. We are. So we're going. And then finally, she's like, so do you want to go? And he's like, yes. She's like, okay, so we should go. Let's go. And then she's like, oh, I guess I should change. And then they rush back into the cafeteria, and she's like, well, why didn't you ask me?
And he was like, because I like you.
And she's like,
that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, what if you said no? Or, that you were doing something important, like washing your hair.
I have that too.
It came out so weird. Everything else was like very sort of. He was a pretty good actor. I mean, he worked.
He's fine. They had a bad take and they didn't care. I was like, that's fine.
We have to keep going. We have to keep moving.
Your hair?
Washing your hair.
Oh, you're washing your hair.
I washed my hair today.
No, I was my hair.
Oh, speaking of unusual accents and something that I'm looking forward to because it came out yesterday. I haven't watched the new season of the Real Housewives of the new episode of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City yet. Have you watched it?
Yes, I did.
Is it a good one?
It is a good one.
Okay, good. No, because my favorite thing is that aside from the fact that everyone is just they can't, like, these people in Salt Lake are just unbelievably compelling. Every single one of them is weird in their own different way, but the voices are so good. And Lisa's my favorite one because she talks like this man. Like she's
actually my least favorite one.
And then I had some tequila.
Honestly, she's my least favorite one for that very reason.
It's like I could watch it. I could watch that show with my eyes closed.
Well, you traveled to go meet Big Ange, and I can't. She makes me very uncomfortable. I can't have her on my television for 2 seconds, and you were comfortable being in a room with her. So there's different barometers.
I hung out with her. She was
I know.
I've
nice. Seen the pictures
many times. I hung out with her twice, actually.
You guys are tight.
We are tight. R.I.P. Big Ange.
Anyway, regardless, we learn that Ben is just as insecure as Natalie. Hunks, they're just like us. Mrs. Garrett and the girls come in just in time to hear the good news. Blair has the tablecloths covering her face, which I thought was a nice touch. Tootie, however, is rightfully outraged by the hypocrisy. What about when Nat said that a girl could have fun staying home on a Saturday night? She can, I guess, just not Nat. Blair's pissed too. Is
Joe the one who's like, what? I thought we were gonna, share our intimate secrets?
No, that's Blair. Blair's pissed. Blair. She's like, what happened to camaraderie and sharing secrets of the soul? And that's like, we'll share them over lunch. And then Joe's like, what happened to manipulation and male chauvinism and women's rights? And Dad's like, Joe, don't be a bore. And then she happily proclaims that she's not going because she has to go. No. She's going because she wants to go. And I wrote, this is outrageous.
Yeah.
That's my last note.
I wrote down all of the other people in the room, aside from Ben and Mrs. Garrett for no reason, are literally basically yelling at Natalie saying, what the fuck, you dumb, hypocritical cunt.
Yeah.
And she's like, sorry, gotta go smash some dick.
And that's our episode, man. I thought it was a great one. I enjoyed this one a lot. I laughed a lot through it.
I know you laughed a lot.
That's why I'm watching this. I'm not watching this to learn a lesson. At this point, I already know that if I want to ask a guy out, it's okay.
But you're the man. You're the man.
That's true. But I like to ask guys out that are also the man. So it gets even more confusing in my department. So sorry about this one, Britt.
At this point, at this point, it's like, this is one of those, as I said, this is like the platonic ideal of a Facts of Life, because it's like, I would say, near competently made. Like, they're acting, they're hitting the beats, they're telling some, quote, I guess, what are structured like jokes. You know, everyone has enough to do, I guess. But the way they get to the lesson is, and what the lesson is absolutely so hurtful and poisonous that I feel sorry and offended at the notion that little kids were watching this show in 1982, laughing at this and being like, you know what? Don't be so serious about this stuff. No, it's fine, you know?
Don't be a bore.
Don't be a bore. It's fine.
That's the lesson.
That's the lesson.
All right, so I actually do have, I'm going to correct myself. I thought this was the last episode of 1982, but we got one more before we dive into 1983.
Ooh.
And that will be next week's episode, which is called September Song. And it's about Mrs. Garrett getting a really old boyfriend.
How old?
Really old.
How did she meet this man?
I don't know. At his funeral? I'm not sure. We're going to learn. We're going to learn together, you and I. We're going to share it with the lovelies. But this may be the first episode that airs in 2021. So if it is, I just want to thank all of the Facts of Lovelies, and I hope that they have a great year, better than the one that just happened. Mm-hmm. And if you had a great 2020, then wow,
good for
that's
you.
Impressive.
Yeah.
But then I feel like you've used up all your luck, and 2021 is going to suck for you. But the rest of us, it's going to be better.
Yeah.
Anyway, until next time, thank you so much. And remember, don't be a bore.
Fuck Eunice Schramm.
Fuck Eunice Schramm. Bye-bye.